Good morning and welcome to our February 2026 Atlas Answers. Today we're going to be discussing AT considerations for our transition age students. My name is Carrie Bridges and I am the program manager for Atlas. And I appreciate you joining us today. If you do want to view the slides, either while we are going through them or afterwards, you can do that by clicking on the QR code, or you can visit that link. The link is on the next couple of slides, so if you missed that, you can also go ahead and get it there. So let's get started. So today we are going to talk about some transition age students in general, and then what AT considerations we might consider for those students. And then at the end, we will have a little time for question and answer if anyone has any. So just quickly an overview if you're not familiar with Atlas. The Atlas project offers an equipment lending library. It offers technical assistance, so maybe you need a little bit more support in determining what devices or tools or apps you might want to use with your student. And we also offer workshops and trainings. All of our supports and services are at no cost to you. If you borrow items from our lending library, we send it to you, and we also include a return address label, so you can send that back, again, no cost. And then the technical assistance and professional development is also at no cost. If you do borrow items from our library, you can get that for 6 weeks. You can trial that with your students and see if it might be something that seems like a good fit. Okay, so talking about transition age students. So, what is a transition age student? So, according to the IEP, a transition age student is a student who is 14 or will be 14 or older when the IEP is implemented within the next year. So once a student hits that age, at each IEP meeting, it is required to discuss the transition from high school and to complete transition related activities to help them prepare for that. So when they're doing those activities, they're going to think about things like what career might they be interested in? What are their post-secondary education goals? Are there outside agencies that can help support them in their goals and daily living? They're also going to talk about housing. So those are all things that should be worked through each year as a student begins thinking forward to that transition age. So what role does AT play in transition? So the environment and the expectations are going to change for students, but AT can help them navigate that. So AT is going to be beneficial not only for academics, but also for a number of everyday skills, including communication and independence. And really, the hope is that enabling this consistency with the AT that they've been using will help them kind of bridge that next step when they're unfamiliar settings after they've transitioned out of high school. So, what can they use for that? So, some AT is going to be helpful for their academic work. Hopefully, those students maybe are using those AT tools now and seeing success. There's other AT that might be necessary for their everyday life. Um, So we are thinking about which tools are part of the student's AT survival tools. So that means what tools are they using that are most impactful for that individual? And these often include supports for communication, self-advocacy, self-regulation, executive function, safety, reading, maybe orientation. Each individual, it's going to vary from person to person. So knowing what each person needs to be successful is going to be really important as you work on what tools are necessary. So, how do we determine what they might need? So, when we're figuring out what could be considered an AT survival tool, we have a couple considerations. Is the student able to use the tool independently? Are they able or do they use it outside of the classroom? Is it something that might prioritize their safety? Um, we should only transition them with the tools that they know how to use. So if they don't know how to use this tool, giving that to them after high school when they don't have anyone to help them learn how to use it is not going to help them be successful. So we got to prioritize what do they already know how to use that will be of benefit to them. So when the IEP team comes together, there are some questions they're going to want to identify to determine the supports the student currently benefits from. So I want you to think outside of the IEP for a moment and just consider how different of an environment school is compared to any other environment. At school, every minute of the student's day is scheduled for them. a bell rings maybe every 47 minutes. It tells them it's time to go to the next class. If they take medication, they either are going to be prompted to go to the nurse and get that medication, or it might even be delivered directly to them. So, what aspects of the student's current environment at school are we already supporting them in? And then also think about, can the student describe their supports? This is important because it indicates how much they might be able to describe to a future employer or a professor and letting them know, hey, this is what I need in order to be successful. So tools and transition. So some tools are going to transition better than others. That's just kind of the way it is. So for example, supports that are portable, they're built into existing devices, they're free or they're low cost. Those are going to be more likely to be successful within that transition than others. So keeping that in mind, some tools are only going to be available to educational institutions or on certain devices. And those tools are going to be harder to get as an individual and then less likely to transition well. So if they can't access this certain app that's only for school districts, or if they don't have the correct device that they need for that, it's going to make that transition more a little bit harder if they don't already know that. So here are a couple examples of things that might transition well. These are either free or low cost, and they're usually easily accessible on very common devices. So for read aloud, the read and write for Google Chrome is easy. It's just an extension you can add. The PDF reader, our OCR, Cami, is going to work really well. And then also for time management systems that students might be using, so a bell system or an alarm, we have our phones that have alarms, they have timers, and those can be really easy options for students to use. And then thinking about team readiness. So, or excuse me, student readiness with the team and what questions they can answer. So we also want to consider factors related to the student's readiness and their ability to advocate for AT after they leave high school. So can the student describe their needs? Can they let people know what it is they need to be successful? Can they describe what works well for them? Do they know what works well for them? Are they comfortable and proficient using these tools? Again, if they're not comfortable and proficient using these tools while we're supporting them in high school, it's going to be much more difficult for them to use those tools after. And then finally, can the student identify when a tool isn't working as well as it should be? Maybe they have been given something, they're trying it out, but they're like, this isn't a good fit for me. This is not working. Can they identify that is happening? So as we look into steps to transition, when we're looking at AT for transition, we can look at the tools they currently use and then also explore whether they're a good option for the student after high school. So thinking about, will the tool even be available? What would funding look like for that tool? So if there's a cost associated, can the student pay that cost? Is a parent able to support them? Are they not able to? And also, how are the students and others getting training for that AT tool? So oftentimes, if a person is using an AT tool in a setting like school or an employer an employment, the other people who are engaging with them might also need to know how to use that AT to interact or help them do the things they need to do on a day-to-day basis. So is someone going to be able to train others and or the student on that AT? So what are some more questions the team needs to consider? So schools, we know, are very different places from the rest of the world. So here are some questions to help the student's team determine how the student's environment and needs will be different after high school. These are critical for determining the most appropriate AT. So what is the student's potential plan for after graduation? If they intend to enroll in post-secondary education, that might look very different than if they just want to go out and maybe get a job. What type of environment is the student going to be in? Also can really vary depending on what they're doing. Are they going to live at home? Are they going to live on their own? Are they going to be at a school? So what's that going to look like? What will be the demands in this environment? Is it a high stress environment? Is it loud? Is it low stress? Those can also help determine what AT they might need. And then finally, how does that compare to their current school environment? So if they're used to a very calm, quiet environment and they're going to go into an environment that's loud, it's busy, lots going on, how is that going to affect them and what might they need in order to be successful? So, talking about empowering the student's voice. So, student reflection can be really important. Having the student include their own personal thoughts in the transition section of every IEP is critical and should be happening since the student is of an age that they can participate in that IEP. So, having the students practice showing others how they use their AT can be important. Are they able to explain how they use it, what the person they're explaining it to might need to do, how it's going to impact them in that environment? Students can also practice self-advocacy statements that they might use with others. So, what can they say or how can they express themselves to future employers, professors, a service provider to ensure they're getting the self-advocacy supports that they need? So, how can Atlas support this transition for students? So, we would love to be able to support you in determining the appropriate tools for your transition age student. Educators can borrow items and apps from Atlas and to identify tools that might be appropriate for the transition. You can try them and say, hey, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? You also can consult with one of our AT specialists from Atlas to get personalized recommendations and support on what might be a good fit. You can do that by submitting a TA request on our website. You'll just submit some quick information about your student, and then one of our specialists will reach out to you for next steps. So if you have any questions, we'll kind of go there next. But before that, I just want to let you know there are lots of different ways to connect with us. Our website is on here. We have a catalog that you can search if you know what you might be interested in. If you do want to submit a technical assistance request to get that support from a specialist, the link is here as well. You can email us at k12atlas@eastersealscrossroads.com. We do have a mailing list or newsletter that goes out every month, and that always includes some kind of information about AT, um, but also what our new items are and what's going on with us. So, and then we are on social media as well. Let's see if we have any questions. Doesn't look like we do today. So we'll go ahead and wrap that up. Thank you so much for visiting with us today, hearing a little bit more about AT for our transition age students and how you can support them. Thanks and have a great day.